Hello, everyone, and welcome to DES 104. This is our beginning image and editing class. I'm so glad to have you here, whether you're joining me via the recording or you're here in the live session. I just wanted to find out from everyone how week 2 has been. How did week 2 go? Do you think it was easy? A little hard? So we learned in week 2, just a quick overview, we learned how to do image editing, and it's one of my favorite lessons to teach. Actually, I think image editing is so much fun. There's a lot of versatile ways that you can incorporate it in not only in your career, but as a hobby. If you take pictures of family photos, or if you like to scrapbook your kids' events, or any memories that you want to preserve and want to edit, this is a great way to do so. So what I'm going to do is, please excuse the noise in the background. It looks like we've got someone at the door, so I apologize. But I'm going to continue ongoing, so just ignore the noise. So I wanted to find out if there were any questions from this week. I usually like to find out if you have any questions, anything that you want to go over. Okay, and so I know some of you, we kind of had some issues with Photoshop not opening, apparently the way it was saved. I'm not quite sure. I know Photoshop has been giving us a lot of issues lately, so I do apologize for that. Just for week 2, normally I like to open the Photoshop file and double check how you're doing the photo editing, making sure you're doing it on a layer mask instead of on the actual image, but I'll take your word for it for week 2. Just submit a JPEG so that we can get that graded, okay? All right, now let's jump into our week 3 session. So week 2 grading, I gave you some feedback. If there was any other changes that needed to be made, I do want to welcome the opportunity to and invite you to make the changes based off of the feedback I gave you in week 2's grading. And then I want you to apply those changes and then resubmit your assignment. This is optional, but I do allow one resubmission for each week's assignment so that you can have a chance to improve on your work and make those changes and kind of learn along the way. Plus, I think it's great practice for when you get to the when you're able to get into the industry. You're going to have many resubmissions, and seldom will you ever get something perfect on the first try. So, and clients are fickle anyway. So if you're going to go into this as a freelancer or working for an employer, there's always going to be some changes coming back from the client. Not necessarily because you did it wrong, but just because maybe they changed their mind or that wasn't quite what they had envisioned. So it's good practice to get used to not having it perfect the right time. But I thought you all did very good. Just remember to get those JPEGs submitted to me so I can get a grade entered, okay? You didn't do as bad as you thought. It's just we couldn't open the file to verify work, so I am not able to even see the work. So please send me that JPEG and email me when you've done so, and I'll go in and adjust your grade, okay? And if it doesn't get adjusted, you know, in the next few days, for sure by Sunday you will have a grade posted, okay? So week 2 review, we kind of reviewed a little bit about the image editing, and in our tutorial and demonstrations today, I'll go over some more image editing if you'd like, but some of it's going to kind of tie into what we're doing for week 3. Does anyone know what we're doing for week 3? Have you looked at the assignment? What do you think? So what we're going to be doing is doing a composition, and I actually think this is going to be good practice. It's going to give you good practice for using those layer masks. Remember, we worked a little bit with layer masks last week. We're going to work with them again. So layer masks and masking, and we're going to kind of talk about the discussion a little bit, and we're going to go over the assessment. I can't give you the answers and the questions you'll be asked in the assessment, but I'll give you a little bit of a few tips, and I'll kind of go over a few things that you might want to know for the assessment. Now, here's some good news. You will be able to take the assessment multiple times. I believe if I read that right. So it allows you to take it unlimited amount of times. So if you don't get it right on the first time, just kind of mark where you got wrong and kind of review that particular question. Go take it again. So I think and then the highest grade will be taken out of the the whole. So just make sure that you keep going until you're satisfied with the grade. So this would be an easy way to get some points. And the questions aren't that difficult. They're all things that we've gone over the last 2 weeks. So, but again, I will review in this lecture what we might need to know for that. Okay, and then we're going to go into the week 3 media review. We're going to talk about some of the videos. And I know one of a student said that they were having trouble with the Linda videos playing correctly. If this is you, if you've had trouble with the Linda videos, please email me ASAP so we can contact the course coordinator and get that fixed. So if it's giving anyone else any difficulty, I'm able to access them okay. So I'm not quite sure where things are getting I guess where the hiccup is, because I can't see it. So if you're having difficulty, let me know, because if we have more than one person emailing me, this will hopefully get fixed a little quicker. So I wanted to remind you to take your daily checkpoints. Don't forget, they are, because there's good and bad things. So bad thing is you got to actually remember to take them more than one time. The second is that you'll, if you do take the daily checkpoints and get the points, they are a great way to kind of get what I call extra credit. Since we don't offer extra credit in this class, it is a great resource to get those extra points daily, and they do add up to about, I think, I have to check how many points they add up to, but it's like a whole assignment's worth of points, and maybe more, maybe a final project's worth of points. So make sure that you do those. And we'll go into how to be successful. I'm going to go over a recipe for successful assignments, kind of walk you through it a little bit, how to kind of guide this course so that we feel comfortable with it. Now, let's talk a little bit about week 3's discussion. Oh, that's week 2 grading. We talked about that already. All right, so week 3. Have you posted in week 3's discussion yet? And if not, okay, so let's talk a little bit about it. So photo retouching and restoration. This is the topic, the overall topic of what we're talking about, which is tying right into what we did last week, our assignment for last week in week 2. So photo retouching and restoration is a great entry-level job for any recent graphic arts graduate. And if you have a knack for it, this is a great way to kind of boost your portfolio. So knowing the process of non-destructive editing and keeping all of your changes on separate layers is really an essential part of the retouching and restoration process. Effectively using non-destructive techniques maintains flexibility in our designs, and it allows our client edits and modifications to be made without having to start all over. So have you ever done an assignment for a class? We won't necessarily admit to it if it was in this class, and you used a very destructive technique, meaning you edited the original, and then once you've permanently altered the pixels on that image, and then you had to go back to make those edits, the only way to get the original pixels back is to go back to the original image. But if you've already edited over it and made those permanent adjustments, there's no way to go back. So that's why we try to encourage non-destructive techniques of photo editing. All right, so here is our discussion. Let's see. So when creating, and I think this is week 2. I apologize. Let me go down. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Non-destructive techniques. So read the background information, watch the pre-recorded lecture first. This is a very important step that many students forget to do. This will help answer a lot of questions as you're going into the assignment and into the discussion. But though you may be new to photo retouching, you have probably likely seen thousands of retouched photos in your life. Even if you didn't know you were looking at retouched photos, if you open a magazine, those are retouched photos. Anything that is in print is usually retouched, whether it's just a small adjustment like lightening up the background or bringing something else in focus or adding an object into an image, or it could be extreme editing and retouching so that a model is a size 2 and her eyes are blue instead of brown, or her skin, like we did with the Harley image, is just this glossy glow. So it's very interesting to see photo images retouched, and you don't realize it if you look at a billboard that you're driving in your car and you see a billboard advertisement with something on it. No doubt that was retouched in some way. So whether you're standing in line looking at a magazine cover in the supermarket or looking at billboards while driving down the highway, or even if you're big into social media, browsing Pinterest for the latest makeup trends, or if you do Instagram, those always have filters on them. So this level of perfection is important for not only the designer who wants to keep his or her job, but for the company that the image is advertising. So we're going to be talking about editing in this discussion. There are a number of tools that we use when editing images in Photoshop, and some of these we addressed last week. Can anyone tell me what those tools were? So the first tool is spot healing. The second one was the clone stamp. The third one was adjustment layers. Remember, in our assessment, we learned how to use adjustment layers, to use filters, and we use the brush tools. And we'll talk a little bit about the brush tools a little bit more in this lecture, but it's important to make edits natural and seamless with the original image. We just don't want false looking or badly edited images. They're just not effective in selling a product or an idea. So we really need to be able to fine tune it and make it look as natural as possible, as real as possible. So imagine you're working at a company in this discussion when you're replying to your students or making your first initial post. Imagine you're working with two designers. One has a different style of working than the other. I want you to evaluate each of the designer's editing techniques and to talk about which of the two has a more effective workflow in terms of non-destructive editing. And so what we've done here is we've posted Mr. Smith. He believes in having an uncluttered document. So for this reason, he frequently merges his layers together when he's satisfied that the design is on the right track. Whereas Martinez has a document with over 20 layers, and she uses a lot of adjustment layers, such as color balance and hue and saturation. And when she wants to remove the background from a subject, she uses a layer mask. So I want you to talk about the two different designers here and their techniques. Which of the two has a more effective non-destructive editing technique and why? We'll go into that today and explain what the advantages of one of the designer's non-destructive techniques over the other. So I want you to kind of delve a little deeper into how they are organizing their layers and how they're doing their photo editing. And then make some suggestions. What might you do if you were the designer in improving the process, so as to keep things non-destructive? And then don't forget, the first initial post needs to be made by tomorrow, Wednesday, before midnight Mountain Standard Time. This will ensure that you get full credit for your initial post. And by initial post, I mean it does need to be a minimum of 150 words with a visual example. So make sure you've got APA citation. Simply posting the link to where you might have pulled an image or a quote is not does not give you full credit. You do need to cite that source. And if we have time at the end of the class, I'll show you how to do how to find an AP citation generator, so that even if you aren't the best at it, you at least can see how the format is created. And then do 2 follow-up posts of a minimum of 50 words to your peers. And we'll talk a little bit about what just go beyond agreeing and praise. So ask questions, expound a little on what they talked about or on what you talked about, contribute additional information. And I want to see us using the terms and the terminology that we're learning in class. Talk about the tools. Be specific. Don't say, hey, that looks great. I totally agree with you. That photo sure looked real. I want you to say something about the layers that about the layer masks that were used, about the tools that were used. Talk to me about the non-destructive editing techniques that were used. So we'll go over those a lot today, so you'll be armed with a good amount of vocabulary for the discussion, but just be sure that you go beyond just the praise when you comment. And look at but don't copy the benchmarks, okay? I know some of you students have tried to resubmit to me the benchmarks, and unfortunately that's just not, we just can't accept that, and you wouldn't want to submit another student's work anyway. So we will go there. And I just want to welcome Misty. Thank you for coming today. It's good to have you. Now, Misty, I don't want to put you on the spot, but did you have any questions before we go forward? We're just talking about what to expect for the discussion. But okay, perfect. So we'll just keep going. All right, so that basically sums up the discussion. So look for my posts. I thought this would be easy to just look for them in orange. If they're in orange, maybe you'll be able to spot where I'm posting so that it's hard to sift through all the information in the big forum. But make sure you post and stay active. Again, discussions are the only thing that, as per college policy, I cannot accept a late. I would love to extend those deadlines and love to give resubmissions, but unfortunately I can't on the discussion. So stay active. This is how we take participation in class. So there's really no way to earn back participation points if you weren't there in the first place. So make sure you at least are as active as you can and posting on more than one day throughout the week. All right, well, we're going to shift gears here. We're going to talk about the assignment. We've got a lot to go over today, and I want to help you get this assignment started, at least getting the document set up. So if you want to follow along with me, I would absolutely love that. This will also ensure that if you have questions, we can answer them now and not have to wait until later in the week when they do come up. So while I am addressing what we're going to be doing, I would like you to go ahead and get Photoshop opened up on your computer before we jump right in. So please, I just want to emphasize, watch week 3, lecture 1. When you go to the home page under the live sessions where you find all the recordings for that week, look at week 3 and then click on lecture 1. That's the pre-recorded lecture. This demonstrates not only the tools that you're going to need to use, but it's also going to go into more demos about how to set this assignment up. So I'm going to be going through this assuming that we already have a basic knowledge of the tools. And if you need any more further knowledge, I really recommend watching this lecture. I'll know who watched it and who didn't based off of the questions that I received. So please make sure you watch it before you come asking about the tools, because this will basically answer your questions before. There are a lot more demos in the Media Linda playlist, so please make sure you're keeping up on those. It makes life a lot simpler and a lot easier, especially when you're tackling your assignments, if you already have the knowledge already. So make sure you're keeping up on the playlist. Now look at all of the images we are given. So week 3 assignment, does anyone know what we're doing besides the composite image? Have you looked further into it? We're going to be using 4 techniques for making selections to modify parts of an image. What does that mean? Basically, you're going to pick 4 images and you're going to make 1 image out of them. And this is a really fun project. This is a little silly project. I love this. Making selections to modify parts of an image are going to be required to be able to create composite images. So you're going to select certain parts of an image. You're going to change or enhance the myriad of other portions of the image, and perfecting the selection process is really going to make it look like the image was never altered. And that's the goal of the designer, to make it look very seamless, very natural, even if it is a dog wearing a suit or a squirrel holding a baton. We want this to look like it was really taken that way. So there's a number of tools in this assignment that we're going to be working with, and the first one is going to be the selection tools. Making a selection is the first step in masking out the background, and it's important to use appropriate selection tools for the appropriate task. So what I want to do is jump into it, but let me finish out these last 2 slides. So we're going to go over the assessment, probably the second hour. Again, there's no extra answers to search for. Just read the information carefully and evaluate the question and answer. There is no time limit, which is good. Take your time. And I think you can take this unlimited times. So if you don't get the grade you're looking for, or you accidentally clicked the wrong answer, you can take this unlimited times until the quiz closes. But and I guess the good news is that once it does close, it will take your highest score. So this is a great way to get those extra points that you might need, and this is a kind of a surefire way to get those points. And so the good news is you won't need to do an extra design assignment this week. So our assignment 3, the composite image, will be the only design portion of this week's work. And then just a reminder, do your daily checkpoints. Extra credit opportunities don't come in our classes, but you can earn up to 135 points per mod. That's the equivalent of 1 final project. So this is just a great way to get those points. So don't forget to do them. They do add up, and they can hurt your grade too on the other end if you're not keeping up on them. But if you are, please make sure that you do them, because they do add up. Great resources for your help, like today's example. If you've done today's or even yesterday's, this might kind of explain what we're jumping into. And then save the links for the future. Make sure that you're saving the videos that you're watching, and that way you have them. All right, we're gonna move on. Okay, so let's jump into our assignment. We are gonna talk about the, no, we're gonna go here, the composite image. Here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna switch to my Photoshop. If you would follow along with me, that would be great. We're gonna set up our document and talk a little bit about the selection tools and about the editing techniques that we're gonna want to use this week. Okay. Now, Misty, can you see my Photoshop okay? You're probably gonna have to be my eyes and make sure everything is set up correctly. You can see it? Okay. All right, now, let's see, where do we want to begin? Let's start by creating a new document. So you'll open up Photoshop and you'll go to File, New. We're just gonna go through the motions just like we've done the last few weeks. We're gonna create a new document. And if at any time I lose you on the steps, please just holler and say, hey, I lost you. All right, so let's talk about the selection tools real quick once we get this new document set up. So when this new document panel pops up, you kind of do your thing. Remember, what's the first thing we need to do? Is make a new document that is the specific dimensions. And all the way at the bottom of your assignment 3, it gives you dimensions in inches. So some of you might have a different unit of measurement that your Photoshop defaults to. So we want to make sure that we have that selected on the right unit of measurement. And in this case, we need inches and not pixels. If you had it in pixels, it would come out extremely different. So very small. So we need to make sure that this is set in inches, and then the width will be 7 by 5. And I'll leave it to you if you want it, portrait or landscape. I'll be working in portrait orientation today, so I'll have that selected. You can keep the resolution to 72 dpi. And let's see, you know what, in fact, it tells us we do need to work in the horizontal, so we'll do 7 inches wide, 5 inches tall. So we'll do it that way. So I guess it does want us to do the landscape orientation. I'm not going to be a stickler about that because some of the images are different orientations anyways. All right, so everything else will stay the same. It helps to have your background content set to transparent. You'll get that checkerboard background. If that bugs you too much, you can always change it to white. But for ease and comfortability, I recommend using the transparent background. So you'll hit create. This will be your new assignment. Hopefully you've given it a name. If not, now would be the time to save it. We want to save our file as the same way we've saved every other week. So I'll go to File, Save As. And I like saving it to my desktop and then filing it away later. But this way it's just a quick find. I don't have to search my computer for it. So I'm going to save it as the submission requires, which is DES 104 _ assignment 3. First and last name. We're going to make sure the format says Photoshop. We're going to make sure that it includes our layers, and then we're going to hit save. You will be submitting the PSD file this week, so please make sure you do that, okay? Hopefully we don't have any problems like last week. Okay, so you'll notice first thing is first, you're going to want to open up your layers panel. We are going to be working with our layers quite a bit actually. So if you don't see your layers panel popped up, go to your drop down window menu and click down layers. Again, the window menu is alphabetically organized, and so it makes it locate the L's right in the middle there. Makes it easy to find. Next, you're going to want to go to assignment 3. If you have the website pulled up, this is probably the time that you'll want to download. So you're going to be choosing an animal from the images provided. They've given you 4. And then you're going to choose a hat from the images provided. And then you're going to choose a prop. So a suitcase, a baton, a pail, or a broom. And you're going to pick one of those, and then you're going to choose a background from the images provided. I do recommend that you do not deviate from the images that you've been given. So you've been given 4 to choose from. Please select one of the options. Please don't Google any. You don't need to. All right, so we want to use so once you have them downloaded on your computer, we're going to embed them into our file. We want to bring in all of our images into one file. How do we do that? Well, we're going to go to the drop-down menu. So we're going to click on File, click on Place Embedded. And it will open up your menu box here. I don't even know what this is called. Let's see. What is it? I'm not quite sure, your folder, and you're going to go find, I go to my downloads folder because that's where I downloaded everything, and so I'm going to click on the animal, the background that I chose, and you have to do one at a time. So I'm going to hit place. I'm going to do this little guy. I think this is it looks like a lemur, but I could be wrong. So he's placed in there. If you like how he's placed, I mean, you have an option to hold down shift and you can enlarge him a little bit. And because I need him to be a little larger, I'm just going to kind of, with my smart guides on, it kind of shows me the center. So I'll hit save, or you can hit enter. And it will say, do you want to place this? And I'll say, yes, I do. Okay, so he's in there. I'm going to go to File, same way, Place Embed. I'm going to click on my background. And again, it's going to pull it in there. You're going to want to hold down Shift as you resize. What Shift does is it constrains your proportions, so it doesn't give you a nice squished picture or a skewed looking image. It holds and locks the proportions. So as you're resizing them, it does not mess up the proportions. So I'm just going to hold down Shift as I click and drag with my mouse. I'm dragging the corner anchor point of that image. And that looks like a good place. I'm just going to kind of get the stage set up where I want. Just like that. Again, you can hit enter or hit save. That will place your object. Okay, let's do the other two. Go to File, all the way down here at the bottom, Place Embed. Next, I got to pick the the prop. So the prop I'm going to be using is this star baton, because I think the animal is just begging for something to hold. And again, this does not need to be too big, but I'll just hit enter anyways. And you'll notice how your layers are adding each one in the panel there. So we're going to click Place Embed for our 4th and final image. The next one is the hat. There we have it. And the hat does not need to be too big, so I'm just going to kind of shrink it down a little bit and just kind of place it right there. All right, so as you can see, we've got our hat, our prop, our background, and our animal. I'll hit enter there so it can go ahead and place it. Now I'm going to go ahead and hide the layers that I'm not going to be working with. The first layer I want to be is on the bottom is the background. I want my background to be there because when I start making layer masks, I want it to appear on the background. But for now, I'm going to hide all of the layers and I'm going to zoom in. If you hold down Command plus or Control Command plus if you're on a Mac or Control plus if you're on a PC, that will help zoom in. You can also do Control minus or Command minus to zoom out. You can also use your magnifying glass here at the bottom of your toolbar, but I just find it a lot easier to use the keyboard shortcuts, and you'll get the hang of it as you move forward. All right, so let's talk a little bit about selection. What might be some selection tools we could use to cut this lemur out for the layer mask? Any guesses? Yep, quick selection. And that's usually my go-to. Usually if I have, unless something has really hard edges, I like the quick selection tool because, well, it's just that, it's quick. So you'll find your quick selection tool here on the toolbar. So great job, Misty. Thank you for chiming in there. I'm just going to go in. There's a couple ways that we can make a layer mask. So I'm going to go over a few of them. Here's one. You can directly start clicking and dragging, holding down that mouse and just trying to get the animal cut out. Now what the quick selection tool does is it kind of gravitates to the hard edges that it detects. So it makes it easier. You don't have to be quite as accurate when you're using it. But it's hard for low-res images like this one because it's very pixelated, so it can't detect hard edges very easily. But I'm going to try my best and kind of go in here. I'm going to show you a few different ways to tackle this. But first things first is just to kind of get used to how to select the image. So I'm going to go in here, try to get as close as I can without grabbing that background so that he looks as natural as possible. When I place him on the other background, the stage, I'm going to kind of go in here. So by clicking and holding the selection tool, this will allow me to click and drag around the selection that I want to make. And if you ever mess up or grab too much, just hit Command Z if you're on a Mac or Control Z if you're on a PC. That will kind of back up your steps. You can also pull up your history panel and you can back up that way. But I find it easier, the more keyboard shortcuts I can remember, the faster my work goes. So I can have one hand on the keyboard and one hand on the mouse. And that helps me save on time. So again, I'm just going to kind of go in here. I can clean this up later. I just want to make sure I get a good selection. Now, also, I'm doing this very quick and dirty because I'm trying to, for sake of time. But I would probably, if I was doing this for a client, spend a good 30 minutes on just zooming in. You can even zoom in and make sure that you are getting this guy. But so I'm telling you that because I don't want you to assume you can go as quick and fast as me. I would probably spend a little bit more time going in and kind of fine-tuning the edges of this. I don't even know. I think he's a lemur because I see his striped tail. All right, so I'm going to call him a lemur. That's what we're doing. All right, so with the quick selection tool, I've gone in and I've selected this animal here. And now with the animal layer selected, I can click on my layer mask button here at the bottom, add layer mask, and what it automatically does is it cuts him out. So if you understand layer masks at all, you'll understand that the black hides the pixel information. The white reveals the pixel information. So you'll notice here, if you look at my animal mask, that he's cut out in white. So you see his little figure in white. That means that that's the portion of the image that you can see, and the black is hiding everything else in the background. So he looks good. I can even go in and kind of clean him up. There's two different ways that I can do that. Now, if you right-click with the animal layer selected, right-click and click Large Thumbnails, what this does is it enlarges your thumbnails a little bit so that your work is a lot more visible. And I think it's important to be able to see what's actually being done. So I can hold down Alt and click on my mask. Here, if I wanted to go in and paint in the edges a little bit more, we'll get into that later, or I can click on the animal image itself, click on the mask itself, and then I can go in and kind of use the brush tool and touch him up. But he looks okay for now. So that's how we create a layer mask, okay? Now, if I were to make the background layer visible, you can see how he's placed on there. So you can kind of see what I would need to clean up. So down here at the bottom, his legs kind of need some fine tuning. I need to move him down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is go directly to this mask. Make sure the mask is selected, and I'm going to grab my paintbrush tool. Now remember, we want to set our foreground to black so that it hides the pixel information. And if we are trying to reveal something, we want to set it to white. So we're using black and white. Now there are gray variations of masking and editing, but we're not going to get into those today. We're going to stick to black and white today. So I want you to just kind of get a feel for that. So if I want to paint over some of the parts I don't want visible, I need to make sure that my foreground down here is set to black, okay? Now, once you choose your brush and you select your brush size, I'm gonna make it really, really tiny because I'm gonna be zooming in quite far, and he's very pixelated, so it's not gonna be very clean. But as you notice, I'm painting, I'm just kind of cleaning up some of that green and making sure his fur is nice and cleaned. Get rid of any detection that he was ever on a different background. And I kind of clean up the edges here. And I don't know if you can notice it because it's so small, but on my mask, you can see how there's more black appearing because I'm going in and I'm kind of touching him up. I'm gonna clean out his paws here, kind of get those grooves in there. All right, and I'm not going to spend too much time for the sake of the demo, but I do want you to be able to spend the time necessary to cleaning up the edges, making sure this looks as real as possible, and have some fun with this because this is a really fun way to get creative. Class doesn't always offer us an opportunity to feel creative when we have liberties, but this is good because you can choose the picture you want and you can also make it look however you want based on the options that they're giving you. All right, so I'm going to clean this up. This also works if you hold down the Alt button if you're on a Mac, or the Option button if you're on a PC, or sorry, Option button if you're on a Mac, Alt if you're on a PC, and I can do the editing directly on here. So with my brush set to black as the foreground, I can come in here and start cleaning up a little bit. I can see where I've missed, clean up those areas. So this is a great way to also do it. You can edit directly on that mask. See that? It's kind of neat, huh? All right. So he looks good. I won't edit him any further at this point. So then I can go back and click on my background and see what he looks like. I'm going to zoom out. He looks pretty good. I can even grab the mask and kind of move him down. I didn't cut him out very well here at the bottom, so I'm actually going to move him down on the stage a little bit, like this. All right, and I could choose to enlarge him if I wanted him a little bigger. The way that you would edit the size is you would go to Edit, Free Transform, or you could go to Transform Scale by holding down the Shift button. Oops. Holding down the Shift button will allow me to make him a little bigger. And he might need to be for if he's going to hold a baton. So I'm just going to grab the corner anchor point and hold down Shift. And then I'll just hit Enter. And it will ask me if I want to apply the changes before saving, and I will be good. So your son knows what a lemur looks like, so that's good. And you know, I even messed up because if you click on the actual image, you can see his tail here in the background. So I should probably go in and try to grab his tail, but it's not very in focus, so I don't think it's going to add to the picture. But yeah, your son is right. Okay, so let's go back to our composite image. All right, so then we're going to do the next prop the same way. So can you remember the steps? It's the two-step process. You select your layer, and you select what you want. Grab your selection tool and select the object in that layer, and then you click Add Layer Mask. So we will, instead of using the quick selection tool for this, this has some hard edges. So I'm actually going to use my lasso tool for this job. I'm just going to kind of, oops, not my lasso tool, I'm sorry, my polygon lasso tool where it does the straight edges. So I'm just going to go in and trace the star as close as I can get it. This is going to be a lot faster, I think, than using the selection tool because it's very grainy, so I don't think it's going to detect all of the edges. I'm going to go in here. And the important thing is when you use the lasso tools is you have to come back to the original point where you started so that it will make the area a selected area. Okay, so I've got my image objects selected. Now what do I do? What is the next step? Step me through this. There's one last step. So the next step would be to add layer mask here at the bottom. So at the bottom of your layers panel, you'll see the icon here, layer mask. And what that does is it automatically selects that for me. Now I can go in and kind of clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to hide my other layers, and it's going to be a little hard to see the white on this checkered background, but allowing me to kind of zoom in here. This will work. I can even grab my polygon lasso tool instead of trying to erase again. I could even try to, actually, no, I'll use my deselect. Okay. I'll go in and grab my paintbrush tool. Make sure it's set to black because I want to hide the pixels I'm about to paint over. I'm just going to kind of go in here, trying to get as close to this little stick as possible. All right. You got to be careful. It's so grainy. Usually you'd be working with a lot higher resolution images than this, but try to do your best. Okay, so with this selected, and I can even go to my layer mask by holding down the option button and clicking on the mask itself, kind of see what areas I need to clean up, see if it looks good and solid, see if I didn't miss anything. That looks pretty good. I'll go back to the, oops, click on the mask. Okay, now I will bring my objects into view. And I'm going to select this baton with the mask selected. Make sure your mask is highlighted in the layers panel. And I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Scale. And I'm going to hold down the Shift button and I'm going to scale this back. If I hover over the anchor point, or let's see, now I'll go to Edit, Free Transform. Now, if I hover over the anchor point, the corner anchor points, you'll notice how my mouse changes directions. It's now curved. What that is doing is it's getting ready to rotate the image. So this is exactly what I want to do. I hold down Shift, click and drag, and what this does is it allows me to rotate it and it locks it into perfect 30 degrees. All right, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and kind of bring it out, so kind of enlarge it. So the pixels are, or I'm sorry, so the image is proportionate, holding down that Shift button. And I'm going to try my best to kind of angle this baton so it's in his hands. It's going to be a little tricky. All right, there we go. So I've kind of got it positioned just right. And I'll go in and do the fine tuning in just a minute. Hit enter when you need it placed and it will automatically place it for you. Now what I'm going to do at the next hour is we're going to go in and fine tune how to make his hand look like it's actually holding the baton instead of the baton completely over his hand. We'll make it look as natural as possible. I'll go in and do that later, but I want to get the next layer set up. So I'll hide the background again. I'm going to hide this lemur and I'm going to hide my baton and I'm going to make my hat visible. All right, and so click this hat here, and I'm going to grab the selection tool, and I'm going to increase the brush size a little bit so it's a little bit bigger. And I'll make it a little smaller to get those tiny portions. Okay, and I don't need the shadow, I just need the actual structure of the hat. So what I'm going to do is go to, with the selection selected, I'm going to go to Add Layer Mask, and that creates the layer mask right there. All right, so now this allows me to move the mask around. I can bring in my other subjects into full view. I'll grab this hat here. Now, do you direct me to where I should go if I were to resize my image? So I would go to Edit at the top, Free Transform, and then I would hold down the Shift button. This will allow me to kind of get a good size of the hat. And kind of make this a little smaller. I guess it's up to you how small you want to make it. That looks about right. Okay, and then I'll hit enter. Now remember, before you resize any image or before you make any edit, you want to make sure that the layer mask is selected and not the original image, okay? That's very important. I can't stress that enough. So make sure that the mask is selected before you start going to resize an image. Make sure the mask is selected before you go and touch up any areas. Otherwise, you'll be painting on the original image, and that is destructive, okay? So what we're going to do is, with this selected, we're going to go to, all right, so now I've got all of my images placed in my composite. I need to start making this look natural. So I'm going to go to my, let's see, I'm going to go to my prop of my baton, and I need to make it look like the hand is over the baton. Now I can't zoom in quite as much as I want to because he's so grainy, but I'm going to position that right there, and I'm going to go and grab my brush tool. Now I want to hide the fingers, or yeah, I want to hide the baton portion that I don't want to be visible. So I'm going to make sure I'm on my mask, my prop mask, and I'm going to select my brush and make sure the foreground is set to black. So I'm going to go over here and kind of make sure that I'm kind of erasing the part where his hand is. And it's really hard to see because it's so pixelated. I might have to do this a few times. Kind of make sure his thumb is over it. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to just erase the portions. And now I'm not using the eraser tool. I'm painting over the fingers here, over that baton. And then I'll zoom out so we can kind of take a step back. Now it looks like, so here's a good example of why you would want to use a layer mask. I'm sorry, yeah, you paint over the layer mask instead of using the eraser tool, is because I erased too much of this finger. There's a portion of that finger I want to hide. So what I'm going to go and do is paint over it with white and bring it back. I'm going to bring that baton back. Just like that. So it looks like his finger is holding it. And I'm going to go to the lemur. I'm going to zoom in. Again, this takes some quite a few steps. I'm going to zoom in there. I've got too much of that white showing, so I'm going to grab the black and I'm going to hide that. Make sure my lemur is selected. Okay, so now he's pretty well set. He's ready to dance on the stage. So he's got his baton, his hat, and this little guy. All right, so I think that's all that we need to do for the composite. Are there any questions? No questions? Okay, so I think here it would be a good time to take our 10-minute break. So I want you to kind of play around with this, get those animals and the props and the backgrounds downloaded. Just pick one of each, and try to play around with this and get those layers embedded. And then remember, use the non-destructive techniques. We call it masking, because after a selection is made, clicking the mask tool will allow you to separate the subject from its background. And like you saw me, I had to go back and fix the baton and the fingers, but I used the paintbrush to do it. So you can also refine the mask after it's made by utilizing the mask properties, using the properties window here, or painting directly inside the layer mask. And I also love making these layers a little larger because it allows me to see what I'm working with, and it allows me to see those changes since the thumbnails are so small. So remember, try to enlarge those if you can. It's just a better way to view things as you design. All right, well, what we'll do is we'll stop the share here. We'll go back to our whiteboard and we'll go to our 10-minute break, and we will come back and go over any questions you may have. We'll also start talking about the assessment, and I want to also go over a few more masking techniques if we have time. All right, we'll see you soon. All right, so we are back. I apologize for the little delay. There's someone at my door. Okay, so we are jumping in. So have you tried to do the composite image? Have you braved Photoshop and the masking layers? I'm actually going to go in here now and create a new document because we're going to review what's going to not necessarily be on the assessment, but what might help you during the assessment. So I'm going to create a new document, and don't worry about this. I'm just going to go back to our normal 7 by 5 dimensions. And I'll hit create because I'm going to demonstrate a few things, and I want to, I'm going to kind of open this up to this will be kind of a Q&A basically. So we're going to talk about some questions that you might need to know. Let's talk about how we place an image. So if we go into File, I'm going to place the embedded image. Now, when we resize an image in Photoshop, it's essential. Let me grab this animal here. It's essential that you hold down the Shift button when you resize. What happens if you don't hold down the Shift button and you try to resize this yourself? What happens? I'm not holding down the Shift button. I'm just kind of resizing the image. I'm trying to guesstimate basically. So what happens when you don't hold down the Shift button is that the height and width proportions change. It results in a very skewed or stretched image, and sometimes a designer might accidentally release the finger from the Shift button prior to completing the resizing process, and that can also result in this look here. So the way that we want to properly place an image, so we'll go place embed. I'll pick that animal, little lemur. And I'm going to resize it. So I'm going to hold down the Shift button, and whether you're on a Mac or a PC, it's the same keyboard tool. You're going to just hold down Shift, and now I can click on any of these anchor points, or rather I should say the corner anchor points here, and resize the image so that the proportions are constrained, so that they're all the same. So to ensure that you haven't accidentally distorted the height to width proportions, check the width and height here up at the top. See the width percentage to the height percentage. So checking these values at the top of your workspace when you begin the process for resizing, and just make sure that the numbers are exactly the same. So if it's a little off, so this is off by 6%, make this by 7, hit enter. So now they're the same. And even a few decimal points can really make a difference. So we want to make sure it's the same. And then when you've done that, you hit enter and you have your resized image. So just remember that as you look at an image and you try to evaluate which image is the original, you want to be able to check which one was resized properly, which one wasn't skewed or squished at all. Okay, so we want to make sure that our dimensions are that we constrain the proportions and that our dimensions are the same, and you can tell that by looking at the dimensions at the top. All right, so just be aware that the height can be skewed or the width can be skewed, and it makes the image look a little squished. All right, so now let's take a different direction here. Let's talk about the Photoshop tools. Actually, we won't go there. Well, okay, let's talk about this one. I'm going to grab the tool here. I'm going to grab the brush tool and change it to blue. I like blue. And I'm going to make the brush size a little big. And I want you to tell me that easily looks like a brush tool did that, right? I can even adjust the hardness or the softness. I'll bring that hardness way down, like that. So it's easy to tell that the brush tool made this because it almost looks like it's this little spray can look going in, right? So this would be a brush tool effect. We also use the brush tool for what? What is the point of using the brush tool? And I'll give you a hint. We're using it in assignment 3. We're using it to mask our layers and to create selections. So we're going to use the brush tool quite a bit, but we need to make sure that the color is either black or white, depending on whether or not we want to hide or reveal something. All right, so I'm going to grab the pen tool and I'm going to show you what this pen tool does. We haven't used the pen tool yet, but if you've worked in InDesign at all or Illustrator, you'll know that the pen tool is notorious for having these Bezier curves and these handlebars. And depending on which direction your handlebars are pointing, can adjust the Bezier curve. So you'll get into the pen tool quite a bit as you get more into your graphic design classes, but I can switch this over here to make sure the stroke is, make sure that's turned on. Delete this real quick. I'm gonna grab my pen tool. All right, there we go. Now go back to that original. So you can easily tell that a pen tool did this job because you see those anchor points that are used. Let me grab my pen tool again. So whenever you click or you see these Bezier curves or these anchor points or these handlebar tools, you'll know that a pen tool was being used. Okay, so what tool would you use to fill a background? If I drew a shape like this, grab my rectangle tool here at the bottom, what tool would I use to fill this shape? Pretend it's not filled. What if I want to make it red? I would probably go to my paint bucket, right? So I would select my paint bucket and I would make sure the foreground was changed. So I'll change it to red here and I'll click on it. You might get a notification asking if you want to rasterize it. You can click OK. There we go. So based on what you've learned, several tools can actually achieve the same result in Photoshop, you'll find. But you kind of evaluate the tool names as you're going through the assessment and evaluate the tool names and the type, and then what would be most appropriate to use. Sometimes which is the most efficient way to go about doing the same thing. All right, that's going to be kind of your hint this week, is what tools would be easier to use, even though there's multiple steps, multiple ways to achieve the same effect. You want to make sure you're using the one that's most efficient and the one that we've been emphasizing lately. All right, so let's talk about, what if I wanted to create a gradient on this square? You probably need to go to your color here. Now, to create a gradient, you have different tools that you can use, and it will give you a different effect. Now, in Illustrator and InDesign, they have the gradient tools. You can even go into gradient map or gradient in your adjustment layers. I'm going to hide this square here. I'll hit OK. So you can kind of have this. And give it a different color. There we go. So there's a gradient. You can achieve a gradient look in the adjustment layers panel here at the bottom. But this is a gradient tool that's used to create a very nice gradient. Now, what tool would you use to create words? Can you tell me what tool you would use to create words? You'd probably use the type tool, right? What's nice about the type tool is it's pretty universal throughout the Adobe suite. So you've got the InDesign that uses the same type tool. Illustrator uses the type tool. So it's only natural that Photoshop would use a type tool as well. And this is where you would type your words. So it's also called the text tool. So in InDesign, it's called the type tool. Illustrator, it's called the type tool. But in Photoshop, it's called the text tool. So you'd want to use the text tool to create this. So now we talked about this during week 2, I believe, when we did, or it might have been week 1 even. So let me hide these layers. Now I showed you how to draw a shape. You can grab these shapes here, these preset shapes, the rectangle tool, rounded rectangle tool, and the ellipse tool. Don't forget the polygon tool and the line tool. But if I wanted to create a custom shape, I could select custom shape in my toolbar here at the bottom and go up at the top where it says shape. And there's a lot of really neat preset shapes in here. So if I were to create a paw print, something that would be unique in Photoshop, there we go. That would be a custom shape. And you would use the custom shape tool to achieve this look. There's a lot of different custom shapes. You can do butterflies, stars, music notes, anything that looks like it was already pre-drawn would most likely be a custom, used a custom shape tool. All right, so what tool was used? Actually, you know what I want to show you. So I want to show you the difference here. Here is an ellipse tool. Now you'll notice when I draw an ellipse tool, you'll see these little anchor points, 4 anchor points that create that shape. There's also sometimes a default fill that accompanies it. It usually just picks the last fill color that you use, so it kind of has that history. But the difference between using a shape like this and if I go and grab this elliptical marquee, look at the difference. So when I draw an elliptical marquee, or the oval marquee tool, what this does is it kind of highlights this hot spot. It almost makes it look like it's a selection instead of an actual shape. Because when I grab the shape tool, the elliptical shape tool, and draw it, you'll notice there's little anchor points, or sometimes it's filled in. So the difference between these is that one looks like a selection and the other one is an actual shape. So you'll want to make sure that you see the difference. So when you click on your tool, the elliptical marquee tool or the oval marquee tool, this would probably be the tool that would make it look like this. Okay, so let's also look at, I'm going to hide this layer. I'm going to go back to my shapes tool, and what do you think? So I'm going to deselect this. Okay, and I'm going to grab my rectangle tool real quick and fill this in with white. Here we go. All right, so what if I took this and started going like this? What tool am I using? Can you tell me? What tool do you think I'm using? This would be the eraser tool. So the eraser tool is actually a destructive form of editing, and we haven't emphasized or used the eraser tool in this class yet because there are other better ways of going about it, which is using the brush tool on a layer mask. So this is the eraser tool, and this is what it does. It actually does permanent damage and permanently erases the pixel information from this image, and in this case, it's the background. All right. So if I wanted to, let me bring that picture in real quick. I'll go to File, Embed. Now, if I wanted to copy an area on an image, what tool do you think I would use to do that? If I were to copy an area, I'm going to grab this animal, place him back in here. So if I wanted to copy his head, and I go in here and just start painting, what tool am I using? What duplicates an area on an image? The clone stamp tool, right? So it would be the clone stamp tool that would make this effect. All right, and then you'll probably want a little bit, know a little bit about the Photoshop's panels, like this layers panels that we've been working on. This layer panel is ideal for making changes to your document, as you can use it to put each new shape on, or an adjustment, or an object on a new layer. So in the layers panel, you can temporarily hide layers, you can rearrange them, you can make new layers, or maybe add a layer mask to them, okay? You'll probably want to be familiar with the toolbar. Here's the toolbar. This is what it looks like. I'm going to hide this so you can see. The toolbar is right here. The layers panel is right here. And then you have your color panel right here. that kind of displays your colors. And you can also get your color picker up, which looks like this, where you can select a color within, just click and drag that mouse anywhere within that color picker, and it will choose the foreground color. You can also, if you don't see the color you're looking for, you can also adjust the slider here that picks a different color altogether, and then you can adjust and find the shade that you're looking for. So then you'll hit OK. All right, so where would you go to access a logo for a project, probably? So if you're looking for something already preset, you would go to your libraries panel. That would be a place where you would go and make your changes. So in here, if you click on libraries, see, hold up, there we go. So this is where you would pull up your information. And let's pull this out. Right here, so here's a vector smart object. This is where you would keep in. There's other options here. Create a new library. You can sort your information. So if you wanted to pull in a logo that you created from Illustrator, you can do it from your library. So you can save something in Illustrator and pull it in through your library, which is actually very helpful and handy. All right, so let me close out of that. And this one. Okay, so now if I were to ask you, go change the hue of your foreground color. Keep it the same. I want it to still be red, but can you make it like a lighter red? Where would you go adjust that? Or if I said, make this shape a lighter purple, you'd probably want to go to your color picker, right? And just adjust the shade to be a lighter version. Or you can go to your fill box and pick the most recent one. There's also all of these other different shades you can choose from within here. All right, and then where do you go to return to a previous version of your project? So say we made a mistake and we want to backpedal a little bit. We want to go back a few steps, but we want to be able to see those steps. Where would you go? You go to Window, down to History, and then you'd open this History panel. And you can see all these different moves. So now I can kind of back up. It just keeps a whole log of everything. You can even have it display. So this is where I would go to return to a previous version of the product. All right, and then can you tell me where the brush tool is located? Anyone tell me? So the brush tool is located here. And here's a little hint. If it's called a tool, there's only two places it will be. If it's a tool that's most commonly used, it will be on the toolbar. And if you don't see it displayed, just go to Window, because there's the other tools that you'll be using. I guess the ones under the Window drop-down menu are more like your panels, but your tools will be located on your toolbar. Just kind of think of it as like your toolbox. Everything is going to be located there. Even the shape tools, there's lots of different shape tools, and we talked about the different ones. So down here at the bottom, you've got your rectangle tool, the ellipse tool, rounded rectangle tool, the polygon tool, and the line tool down here. I want you to experiment with these and kind of use the custom shape tool and try to get familiar with placing these tools on the page. So if I were to go in here and draw this tool, hold down Shift as you click and drag. There we go. There's a little flower. So you want to be able to match the shape tool with the type of image. So you'll kind of have to be aware of what custom shape tools look like, and then how would you achieve other tools. So you do have your custom shape tool, but if you were to do the polygon tool, here you can decide how many sides you want. So if I wanted 7 sides and I wanted to bring indent the sides by 70%, and hit OK, you kind of get an effect like this. So it's not a custom shape per se, but it was a way that we customized using the polygon shape tool. All right, you'll also need to be familiar with the selection tools, but good news is in our assignment, you're gonna get lots of practice using the selection tools and using those layer masks so that it's very easy. Use our 2 to 3 step process to creating a layer mask. And now I almost forgot to show you how to save your file. So if you go to File and go to Save As, this will allow you to save it as, name it according to the submission requirements, and then pick a place where you want to save it to. For me, I like saving it to the document. I'll organize it later. Make sure that the format says Photoshop and that layers is selected, because I do need to verify our layers, and you'll hit save. And then that's all there is to it. Then you'll submit the Photoshop file. So this should be a pretty simple assignment to do. Just make sure, what I'm going to be looking for though, and let me pull this up, layers here. Okay, what I'm going to be looking for is making sure that you have created your layer masks and that they were properly used. I will also be looking to make sure no permanent editing techniques were used on the original images. So please make sure you do your selections and all of your cuts on the layer mask. And use your paintbrush to go back if you need to edit it at all. But make sure that your mask is selected and that you're working on your mask the entire time, okay? But that's all there is to the assignment 3. Now, are there any questions about assignment 3 before we close out of this? All right, so what I wanted to do was go back to our slides, and there's just a little bit more information that I wanted to talk about. So we've gone over the assessment quiz information, gone over everything that you would probably need to know. So again, take it as many times as possible. And then our reminder, do your daily checkpoints. Remember, our next session, we will be, this is old information, but our next session, we're going to be going over how to do the final project. Now, the multi-session is tomorrow at the same time, so from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And then we've already done the demo. Here are quick steps to the assignment. Use the necessary adjustment layers and blending modes to kind of make subjects appear cohesive with the background. Try your own ideas. We kind of practiced last week with the gradient tools and the photo filters, and we were playing around with the black and white. So do your best to make it look real, okay? I just didn't go into any of that. If we have time, we'll probably go back and kind of fine tune it. All right, the last thing I wanted to go over was, where's that slide? Give me a second. Here we go, the recipe for successful assignments. Okay, so my recommendations and what I see the successful students do in my class is start working on the assignments early. I have the multi-session scheduled early in the week, kind of the middle of the week, but right after our lecture, in hopes that you will kind of try to get a head start on the assignment. And so basically, if you want to be successful in this class, don't plan to be able to do the assignment 1 in a day or just sitting down for an hour or 2 and getting it done, because that's when all the frustration is going to start. If I were you, I would start after this class, start by creating the new document. First things first, make sure you can get that and then embed all of your images. Then kind of break things up to give yourself time. Then the next day, maybe tomorrow for the multi-session, before the multi-session, start trying to use the masking layers. And if you start getting stuck, then come to the multi-session. But don't wait till after the multi-session to come. So give yourself time to digest the information, think about your solutions, and figure out what ideas you have. Maybe just kind of prepare. This will save you time as you work on the assignment. And I suggest this timeline. If you can't follow the scheduled days, try to at least still approach the tasks in order. So here I have on number 1, review the week's assignment. So kind of know on Sunday what you're going to be doing this week, so it's not a surprise. And you can kind of figure out if this is going to be something you're going to spend more time on. So if you're not as familiar with, say, how to use layer masks, than one student or the other, then you might want to give yourself more time or start sooner in the week. Number two, you want to note the information that you might need to know. So basically just kind of use this timeline. So by Tuesday, at least read through the background and the assignment specification. So when you come to class, you know what's going to happen, and maybe already have your new document created. So when you watch the lecture or even the pre-recorded lecture, it makes taking notes a lot easier, I think. And then that way you are not focused on how to create a document, you're more focused on what's being done in the document. So kind of make note of the times that our learning coach is going to be in the Student Success Center. I post her schedule every week. Her week 3 schedule is posted. So go take a look at that. That way you know when to go visit her. And then by Wednesday, we have our multi-session. So already have watched the live sessions and the demos so that you can come to the multi-session having already seen how the basic tools are supposed to work and be used. And that way you are more comfortable and able to ask the questions that you need and get the help that you need. Supplement with the other media that's covering the topics for the assignment. I know some of you are already watching the Linda videos, which is fantastic. Take notes of the things that you would incorporate and use for the assignment. If you have any questions by Wednesday, you can email me, of course, but come to the multi-session that night. So do your research, including looking at and analyzing the examples of the project that you're going to be doing, and then including the benchmarks provided in the course. You could even post in the discussion, just being sure to cover the items that are listed in the prompt. This is all by Wednesday. Post your discussion. If possible, start on your project. So kind of follow along with the demos on a separate screen if you can, or maybe use your tablet so that you can work on your computer, and just pause it as you need. I do these demos quite quickly, but when you're watching the recording, you can pause me or rewind me, and that's great. By Thursday and Friday, we're nearing our deadline. So start to continue on your projects. Be careful to follow all of the specifications. Make sure you look at the rubric and make sure you've named the assignment correctly. You've turned in the right file size, or I'm sorry, the right file extension. Follow along with the demos on a separate screen like we talked about. And even if it's rough at this point, bring it to me or email it before the multi-session so that I can take a look at it and give you feedback or help beforehand. If I'm not available, please visit the Student Success Center. Don't wait to get help, because I probably won't be able to help you as quickly as they can. It's there for you to use during the week. So seek help from our learning coach, the Student Success Center, if you can't come to the multi-session. And you probably might have questions after that, okay? By Saturday, make revisions from the feedback. You're going to need to check the specifications again, including the rubric and submit the assignment. So seek help from our coach, which is Wanda Bryant. And if you don't know where her information is, it's under the announcement section of the course homepage. So if you're having continued problems, you're probably going to need a little bit more one-on-one assistance, and she can help you with that. All right. Okay, so now I have a little video that I wanted to show you guys. Let me see which slide I put it on. There we go. Okay, so let me pull up my web screen. And then I'll go over layer mask one more time. So we'll just watch a little bit of this. We won't go into the whole thing, but I just wanted to show you, I think he explains it brilliantly. Just let me know if you can hear it.
Of information within the original image. And this is a great habit to get into. In fact, there's several built-in capabilities within Photoshop that allow you to do just that. One of the things that we want to do to this image is bring in the clouds from this sky layer behind the California sign. Based upon your knowledge right now, you would probably come over and choose the eraser tool. And with the eraser tool, you would have the California layer active, and you would simply click and drag, and you'll notice that those clouds are being revealed. Once you let go of the mouse, you'll notice that those pixels are removed. So you're getting the result that you want, but you're really limiting your ability to make any further modifications to the image. This is a destructive edit. You've literally removed the pixel information from the image. And you want to avoid that if possible. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this. Command-Z on the Mac, Control-Z on Windows. One thing that you can do is work with something called a layer mask. A layer mask will give you the ability to hide pixels on a particular layer, which is exactly what we need for this particular example. To add a layer mask, you'll just come down to the Layers panel and click the Add Layer Mask button. You'll notice when you do that, the layer does in fact have a mask. It's all white, which means it's allowing you to see all of the pixels on that layer. Now, these thumbnails are actually pretty important when it comes to working with layer masks. So what I want to do is just right-click in the empty space here within the Layers panel, or Control-click if you're on a Mac, and simply choose Large Thumbnails from the contextual menu. When you do that, you'll see that these thumbnails get a little bit bigger, so it's easier to see what's going on. So as you work with this mask, you'll find that if you work with white color, you're going to reveal pixels on that layer. But if you work with a black color, you're going to hide pixels on that layer. And of course, there's also gray variations there, but let's just focus on black and white right now. So if we come over and choose something like the brush tool, and with the brush tool, we select the brush size, and our foreground color is set to black. If we click and drag to start painting, you'll notice we're beginning to reveal the clouds in the background. And we're removing that foreground information that we're seeing on the California layer. Now, once I let go of the mouse, you can see the mask. We can see the black area of the mask. And remember, the black area will hide pixels on this layer. If you want to view just the mask, you can do that. Hold down the Option key on the Mac, Alt on Windows, and click on that thumbnail, and you'll see the mask. This could be a great way to work. If you have your paintbrush tool, you can see the areas that you need to clean up, and you can come over, click and drag, and paint over those areas so the area that you want to be black is in fact black. To get back to the previous view, just...
Okay, so we're going to stop there, and I'm going to kind of demo basically what he's doing. Now, we talked about this
Assignment a little bit, but I wanted to just kind of show that to you because I feel like you probably weren't able to see that because it looks like I didn't share the screen. I do apologize. So I'll go over it so that you can see basically what he was talking about. So I apologize for that. And I'll also post the link if you want to watch it. So what I'm going to do here, grab my, close out of everything. Sorry, I've got so many windows open. Okay. So as you begin to edit photos in Photoshop, he was talking about how you're going to start figuring out ways to preserve the editing capabilities. And one of the ways is by using layer masks, which is what we've demonstrated here. You can preserve the editing capabilities of the picture. So after you've placed this hat or you've cut out this wand, say you wanted to go and make a different adjustment, you can do that because you've done masks. This is non-destructive editing. The original image is preserved. So based upon your knowledge right now, you probably come and choose the eraser tool, which would basically erase out, or to click on this, I'll hide this. If I grabbed the eraser tool and adjusted its size a little bigger, and just start, let me go to the assignment, and just start erasing, it's going to permanently delete that pixel information. And you can see it was done to the original background image, which is not good at all. Even, I'll undo this here. I'll click on this image. If I were to delete this mask, you'd see this. So you're getting the result that you want by using the eraser. So see, I'm actually erasing around this guy, which is a form of destructive editing. So I'm getting the result because I'm cutting him out. But you can tell on my image layer that I am permanently deleting the pixel information. These pixels were being removed. So you're getting the result that you want, but you're really limiting your ability to make any further modifications to the image. This is a form of destructive editing. You're literally removing the pixel information from the picture. So you want to avoid that whenever possible, which is why we emphasize the layer masks. So you'll want to work with a layer mask, and a layer mask will allow you to hide pixels on a particular layer. So in this case, we want to cut this, select this lemur and put him on a different background. So let's see. So which is what we need for this example. So to add a layer mask, you'll want to click on the layer mask button here at the bottom, right here. All right, and what we talked about was selecting this guy, going in and making a selection, and then clicking on layer mask, and he's automatically cut out. The whole background is cut out. And this means that you can see all of the pixels on that layer. So if you look at the layer here, so adding a layer mask, you click on the layer mask button at the bottom of the layers panel, but when you do, you'll notice it's all the selection is all white. Now these thumbnails, I showed you how to enlarge them. You can just right click and click on large thumbnails. This allows you to see a little bit more in detail what is going on. Now these thumbnails are actually pretty important when it comes to working with layer masks. So what I'm going to do is, and I've already enlarged them in my previous example, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. But as you work with this mask, that if you work with white color, you're going to reveal the pixels. So if I grab my brush tool and switch my foreground color to white and start painting on the mask and not on my image, I will start revealing, as you can see, the image behind the pixel information. So I'm revealing the pixel information. Now if I grab my brush and switch the foreground to black, still with my mask selected, and I go in there with black, I start painting with black, what's this doing? You'll notice it's deleting or it's hiding the pixel information. So I shouldn't say deleting, it's hiding the pixel information, because I can go back. Had I used an eraser, I wouldn't be able to show his body again. I wouldn't be able to go and edit this any further. But because I was using the brush tool, I can paint back any area that I want, which makes this really cool when you're editing, doing photo editing, and you either make a mistake or maybe you change your mind. You can go back and add in your image. So basically this allows you to make further modifications to the image. All right, so I'm going to grab my brush tool. You select your brush size here at the top, and then you always need to make sure you're on your mask and that you're on your foreground layer is selected depending on what you need. So if I start painting, you'll notice the background is being revealed. See this? Background, it's because I'm painting with white. White reveals it, and we're removing that foreground information that we're seeing on the front layer. So I can go in here, I can even make this background completely different. So as I'm grading this assignment, I really want to make sure that you're taking your own interpretation of this and you're using the right tools to get the assignment. I'll know if you use the eraser tool, it'll be pretty obvious. But also, I'll be able to see whether or not you used a mask layer. And when I let go of the mouse, you can see the mask layer. We can see the black area of the mask or the white area of the mask, and just remember that the black area is hiding those pixels, but as I'm painting over it with white, it's revealing them. So not to be confused, just make sure you're on the right color and on the right mask layer. So if you have a paintbrush tool and you see the areas that you need to clean up, you can always double click, I'm sorry, not double click, you can always hit Option on the Mac or Alt on a PC, and you can see the areas that need to be painted over, like this. Kind of go in and clean it up a little bit because there are areas that you're missing. So I'm just going in with my brush tool and kind of cleaning up the areas that I want all white. You can even see kind of his silhouette there. Let me go clean that out. Just like that. Okay. All right, and then just hold down Alt and click Window. Just hold down the Alt button and click if you're on a Windows, or you can hit the click option, hold down Option and click if you're on a Mac, and that means click on your mask layer, and that will pull that up. You can also switch the view if you want. Okay. Now, you don't have to work this way. You can have a selection already before adding a mask. Well, that's what I kind of showed you how to do, is have the selection ready before you add the layer mask. But another way to go about it is, so I'll delete this layer mask here so you can see. We'll go ahead and hit delete. So before we would select it and then hit layer mask and it cuts it out for you. Another way to do that is do a selection here. I'm just going to do a rough, quick selection. And then go up to my, let's see, the select drop-down menu here at the top of my Photoshop, and then click Select and Mask. And what that does is you can change the view to overlay, or you can have a different view. But I like overlay because it shows the areas that are going to be selected. And then I can check mark this box Smart Radius and make sure that my edge detection has this set up so that I can go in with my brush tool, my Refine Edge brush tool here, and I can go start clicking on the layer. Kind of get those little hairs that are sticking out. I can also grab my brush tool and make sure I can go in there. Just kind of get in as close as possible. So by setting the view to overlay, it kind of helps you see the edges a little easier. And kind of color this in. So just clicking and filling in will allow you to get that entire selection. So this is another way to do a layer mask. I prefer the other way because it's a little bit faster. It's just like a two-step process. This way it takes a little bit more steps, but you can actually get a cleaner edge, especially when you have a furry animal. You want to be able to go in there and get a real good clean selection. Okay, all right. So once the selection is complete, all you have to do is make sure that the selection is active and click the layer mask button. So you'll hit OK, and there you have it. Our animal layer mask has been set up. Are there any questions at this point? Just want to make sure we're feeling good. I went over a lot. So once the selection is complete, all you have to do is make sure that the selection is active, like I said, and you can also come in with your paintbrush on you can also come in with your paintbrush tool to refine that mask. Again, the way we do that is hold down our Option button or our Alt button, and you can go in here with your brush tool and kind of clean up the edges a little bit. Go and adjust this to hard to make this a little bit smaller. Just like this. Okay, and then you can kind of see if there's too much, you can go back and make sure the foreground is set to black and just make sure that mask is selected. Make sure it's set to black. There we go. And you can kind of clean up any edges that you need. So what's important when we're working in the layers panel is that if you want to manipulate the mask, you must select the mask thumbnail right here. We never do work on the original thumbnail. So you'll be painting, and make sure your mask layer is selected, because if you have the image selected and I take the black paintbrush tool, you're going to start painting over your image, and this is not what we want to do. All right, so we need to make sure that we're on the mask layer. This gives you the ability to work in a very non-destructive fashion, and it affords you the most flexibility when editing your images. Okay, You can always come in and make modifications with it because you still have that pixel information there. But I think it's important to know that that's how to properly set up a layer mask. And so if at all you're ever confused or need some clarification, please let me know. But this is a great way to kind of understand what's going on. All right, lastly, I have one more video to share. This also goes into layers and masking. And a dedicated workspace really makes it easier to remove a subject from the background. So we really want to make sure we have this nailed down for our assignment. So let me get the video up, and this will be the last one, and then we'll close. And this time I promise to share the video. Here we go. All right, bear with the voice. It's kind of a weird recording, but I just wanted to think they do a good job of explaining.
Creating accurate selections and masks in Photoshop is now quicker and easier than ever before. A dedicated new workspace helps you make precise selections and masks. Use tools like Refine Edge Brush to cleanly separate foreground and background elements, and do much more. For this tutorial, I used Adobe Photoshop CC 2017 on Windows. Please note, the Select and Mask workspace replaces the Refine Edge tool in earlier versions of Photoshop, offering the same functionality in a streamlined way. Open an image in Photoshop that you need to extract subject from background. Go to Select tab. Then choose Select and Mask. First, you will want to choose your view mode in the Properties panel. I've already chosen to use on Overlay mode. The Select and Mask workspace features a combination of familiar and new tools. Take Quick Selection tool. Make quick selections based on color and texture similarity when you click or click-drag the area you want to select. The mark you make doesn't need to be precise, because the Quick Selection tool automatically and intuitively creates a border. Still, there is some hair which are not in selection. It's time to make refinements to the edge. Before that, in the Edge Detection settings, turn on Smart Radius. This will help bring in some of the finer details of the hair or fur. If your selection is a portrait that includes both hair and shoulders, then you should use this option to get perfect masks. Now take Refine Edge Brush tool. Brush over soft areas such as hair or fur to add fine details to the selection. This will decontaminate the hair, but also include any stray strands of hair that were missing from original selection. Take the Decontaminate Colors box to remove any color fringing and replace with the color of fully selected nearby pixels.
Okay, so pay attention to this point. This will allow you to get more of a natural look with the fur of
Finally,
the animals.
use the output settings. I almost always use a new layer with Layer Mask. Click the OK button and you're done.
Just make sure that Add to New Layer Mask button is selected.
Now you can drag and place cutout, subject, or composite the image.
All right, so we'll stop there. She's a little hard to understand, but I wanted you to see, she kind of took you through this.
When we went into the select and mask. Okay, so we're going to close here. I think that is it for our tutorial. I just wanted to put it out that we've got our multi-session tomorrow. Please come see me if you have any questions. You can email me. I would love to help you. If you need help after the multi-session, please reach out to our learning coach, Wanda Bryant. Check out her schedule that's been posted in the announcements and kind of see when she's going to be in the Student Success Center so you know when to go in and get help. Don't wait for to reach out to me. I mean, you're welcome to email me, but if you need immediate assistance, please go see them. They can help you. If you need help on the assignments, the Student Success Center is open throughout the week, even on Saturdays. It's been great having you guys. Thank you for joining me at home, and thank you for joining me here in our live session. I hope that this helps you tackle the assignment and gives you a better idea of what to expect. I want you to have fun with this project, and I want to see creativity. Kind of practice using the different there's different filters and the different adjustment layers that you can add to this. So if I wanted to add adjustment layer or do a gradient on this stage, I can use this gradient. And this is a really cool effect. I wanted to do red or a little gray. So play with the adjustment layers, make it look like it's natural, like the animals are having fun. Anyways, have fun with this project. Good luck with it. And I'll see you guys tomorrow during the multi-session.